Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate you being here. We are going to talk about really getting product management stuff done with ChatGPT. I will go to the PG version here. So appreciate you all being here. Yeah, we're excited. We've done a ChatGPT webinar before, but we're excited to do another one where Dean gets to get a little more hands-on. So, Dean, can we go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
So if you don't know, got Dean here and myself, Cameron Lanier. I'm the moderator today. You're not going to hear too much from me today, I promise. I know you all want to hear from Dean. He's our one of our principal consultants and trainers here at 280 Group. We both happen to be out of the Raleigh, North Carolina area. And yeah, Dean's, I don't know anyone who's spent more time with ChatGPT than Dean. So I'm really excited for you guys to see what he's got prepared for you. And it's really, really elegant, beautiful stuff he's got prepped for you. So let's go to the next slide, Dean. So if you don't know anything about 280 Group, we're not going to spend too much time here, I promise. I know you want to see ChatGPT. But in case you don't know anything about 280 Group, we are an outcome-driven product partner. And this little sentence—
Outcome obsessed.
That's well said. So yeah. Our goal is to help people become outcome obsessed and to transform you into outcome obsessed product management teams. We want to make you the better and the best versions of yourselves. And our goal is to do that. Well, not our goal, but the means we do that is with people like Dean. They come in, they are passionate about what they do. They train you how to do it. And there's no one better in the business. So that's who we are, 280 Group. If we can go to the next slide, Dean. We know that we're probably going to have a lot of questions today, and that is great. We welcome questions. We are probably not going to get to all of them, just FYI. So that's also okay. We're already planning on doing some follow-up to this. So Dean will follow up with giving the answers to some of your questions. So please put them in the chat, especially put them in the Q&A. Q&A is going to be an easier way for us to find them. We may not get to all of them during the webinar, but afterwards we still want to address them. And if that means we need to do another webinar, we'll do it. We want your questions to help us figure that out. Now, we've
already got one question from Jose, and yes, we will have. This is recorded, and there will be materials provided. So,
yes,
don't sweat. We've got you covered on that.
Yes,
but thank you for using the Q&A.
Yeah.
Nicely done there, Jose.
That will, honestly, if you really want your question answered, it's going to be a lot better if it goes in the Q&A. You can still put it in the chat, just not sure we're going to be able to always find them there. The chat moves quickly. And yes, this is being recorded. We will share it. If you registered, it's coming your way. So we'll get that email out with the additional materials that Dean's got for you. So with that said, Dean, let's move on to the next slide. And we want to start off with a quick poll question that we'd like to have all of you answer here. So let me launch that. And the question is, how much of your work is currently being assisted by AI? Oh, wow, we're getting a lot of responses really quick here. Okay. So we're going to give it a couple seconds here. Make sure we get as many responses as possible. Obviously, it's a percentage question. If you're not seeing the poll, 0 to 20%, 21 to 40%, 41 to 60, or our favorite, you've already been replaced by AI overlords. So, which if you are, I'd love to know what they're telling you can or cannot say. So anyway, let's go ahead and end this poll. I think we've had just about everyone answer. I'll give it 5 more seconds here. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, end the poll, and let's share those results. All right, so if you are not seeing it, poll question 1, how much of your work is currently being assisted by AI? 0 to 20% is the overwhelming winner here at 89%. And then 21 to 40%, 9% of you are using it that much, and almost half, 1% of you. So that's not terribly surprising. It's obviously a new tool, but I don't want to say too much. I'm going to leave that to Dean. So Dean, take it away.
All righty. So I think we'll stop sharing this, the results here. We're going to change screens up. we're going to go to a product called Mural. I'm going to share a link with you. You will need to at least have the free account for Mural, but we're going to see how this works with this many people. But what you're seeing is a board I'm working from privately, and I've created a copy, an exact copy of this Mural board, and we're going to use this to navigate the workflow of a product manager who's been parachuted into a new situation. A product manager, like all of us, have been dropped into burning fire sometime. And can we use generative AI tools like ChatGPT to help us put out the fires and get things working again? So that's the scenario from a 30,000 foot view here. For those of you who are visiting this here, you'll see that there's an outline. If you don't see the outline on the board you're on, you can open it up. And I'm going to go ahead and dive right in and just talk about generative AI in about 2 seconds here. So as you can see, I have been experimenting with various generative AI. I'm showing mostly ChatGPT, but here's some responses I got from Bing about who the 280 group is and who I am. It even knew that I'm the unofficial zookeeper of the dangerous animals of product management. Not so bad. Now, I also use generative AI to create some rules of the road for this workshop here. So let's be respectful of others. Let's stay on topic, but I definitely want your participation. Listen as others speak. Use the chat. Actually, use the Q&A for the questions. So that, their generative AI got that wrong. Be mindful of time, have fun, and enjoy the experience. And just a few questions. Materials provided afterwards. Yes, there will be materials provided afterwards. Questions asked in the Q&A. Yes, time permitting. What if my question's not answered? We'll use this as opportunities to answer those after, possibly with another webinar on this topic. Contact us for consulting and training. Absolutely, yes. We're going to be using ChatGPT Plus, Zoom, and Mural here. And I do have some useful URLs that I can show you towards the end. And yes, this workshop is being recorded here. So you'll notice that as we go around this board here, I've got some navigation here. This is a next step indicator. We'll talk about a sidebar. We'll talk about tasks. But let's go ahead and go right in. And I talked about being parachuted in. I talked about being like what they call a smoke jumper here in the States. And basically a smoke jumper is a firefighter who also has the ability to be parachuted into burning wildfires here. And the first thing I did was I wanted to get my toolkit set up here. If you notice, this is what like this person is being parachuted in this picture here. This is generally the equipment here. So the first thing we want to do is set a context. Whenever you're in a generative AI setting like ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, you want to set a context here. And so the first thing I said was, hey, can you show me prompt engineering? What would be the steps? And it talks about defining the goal, stating a reason, adding background information. In fact, let me just, instead of just sort of waving through this screen here, you can ask it yourself. Can you provide me a list of instructions for ChatGPT prompt engineering? And surprisingly enough, ChatGPT will answer that question. In fact, you can actually say, if it gets too wordy, you can say things like, hey, can you use less words? And can you add a few points to my list? So you can refine the work. And it's important that we refine the work, because I'm going to tell you why that's important in a second here. And then I asked some other questions like, give me a second. I asked it, can you provide me examples of prompts? Can you teach me how to write prompts? And it gave me examples. I asked for more examples. And you can see that you can actually get into dialogues. You can do flow charts. You can do tables. And we're going to show a lot of this. You can do phrasing, text, And then you can, and so you can see that you can just ask ChatGPT. And then there's different formats it understands as well. And I'll show you how to craft some of those formats. So everything you need to know about a lot of these systems, it'll tell you if you ask them here. And if not, they have online information. So you can always go to their information here and find out here. So for those people who are trying to, charge you $1 bazillion for how to do this, just ask the model you're working in here. It's that simple. So the first thing I wanted to do was set context. And I wanted to set the context of being smoke jumped into a burning situation. I'm saying, look, I'm a new product manager and I've been assigned a new task by my CEO. I ChatGPT, I need you to put on your network coaching, your coaching network thinking cap. Help me to better understand my initiative. So the first thing I did is I talked about the tools we're going to use to put out today's fire. And I listed the tools that we're going to walk through. And I did that, setting the context. Give it a second here, scroll to the top because it keeps putting me at the bottom, needs in there. And you'll notice I said, hey, do you know these tools? And if not, what do I need to give you to let you know? Now it knows all the tools except about coaching networks, but that's okay. I know what a coaching network is and I know how to use that. And then I asked it a question. Basically, I said, hey, I got this memo from my boss. And it's saying, Dean, we had a recent tornado in our town. And the memo goes on to say, like, the CEO, Pilar de Avila, was devastated by the devastation she saw. And she felt like the company we work with, the company, a fake company we call GetGo, this fake company is positioned well to provide a product or a service to help those people in need, to connect donors of household items and clothing to recipients in need. So this is an email she sent me and said, and Pilar basically said, here's the memo. And when I asked, the prompt was saying, look, based on the following Giving for Good memo, I call G for G, create a table enumerating the multiple problems, the pain points, and the unknowns, processes that impact donors, recipients, and charities. So here's what I'm doing. I'm setting a context. The first context I set was, I'm a product manager. Here's my toolkit. So I've been smoke jumped in. The next thing I needed to do was start a design thinking process. I want to spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and then 5 minutes on the solution. And that's going to be a lot of what we do, although it's the ratio is a little bigger here on the solution here. Basically, what I want to do is get from the fuzzy front end, discover, explore, develop, and then get to the problem here. I want to gather our thoughts, fine-tune the session, review the responses, inform the next prompt from the previous prompt, generate responses I want to socialize, and keep in mind that what the approach I'm taking is from a scaffolding approach here. And you're like, Dean, what's scaffolding? Well, scaffolding is a term that we use in engineering that we've heard in the context of Ruby on Rails. Scaffolding is basically a starting point. By the way, I asked Bard, what is scaffolding in Ruby on Rails? Explain it to me like I'm 10 years old. And it basically said it's a way to create a basic structure for a web-based product using the Rails program, a Ruby programming language here. And so what I did was saying, okay, well, we're going to go ahead and approach the problem as a simulation. What I want to do is create a simulation. What I want to do is create a scaffolding of how we're going to approach the problem that Pilar sent me here. So we put this prompt in. Now, Dean, you're not typing any prompts. Some of these prompts take a while to deliver. So I've pre-entered the prompts all the way up to where this star is here. And then we'll actually start doing some live prompts. So the first thing I want to do is understand the problem. So here's the problem. And here's the table ChatGPT gave me. So again, it's product managers, because we have a question here. Isn't it elaborate what do you call it, prompting of ChatGPT? Again, what we're trying to do is understand the problem, understand the right thing before we build it right. Understand the right thing to build before we build it right. And we're going to show you how we're going to start unpacking these problems in that direction as a product manager. So you can see just from this memo, just from this context here, that ChatGPT was actually able to give me a pretty good list. Actually, the first list it gave me was pretty lame. So I had to hit the regenerate button. And then it gave me a much better list. So you always have to refine that. Now, I then ask it for a backstory. So it creates a short backstory that we'll refer to. And yes, you will have access to this mural board here. So again, we talked about the scaffolding, but I want to scaffold this and I want to approach this problem using the Amazon working backwards process. Imagine this, you've been smoke jumped, you've been dropped into a brand new situation. You need to figure out, what conversations do I need to have? What meetings do I need to have? How do I get a jump start on the problem here? One of the ways a product manager who lands in a new situation deals with that is to use a process like the Amazon working backwards method. We're going to take this context we created, and we are now going to walk through the steps of the Amazon working backwards method. And the first thing is understanding, putting the customer first. And before we build a minimum viable product, we need to build a minimum viable segment. So you can see I put some prompts in here. And the first thing I did was prioritization automation. I actually asked ChatGPT to prioritize this table using a formula from Steve Johnson's IDEA prioritization rubric. And I said, based on these factors, take this table and prioritize each of these problems here. Give them a score. So I can figure out which of these problems I might want to look at first, which one of these segments I want to look at first. I then upped the ante. I took it one step further. I said, hey, you already know about RICE and WSJF. Can you use those prioritizations and add those columns as well? So now it took my prioritization table and I asked it to go ahead and said, by the way, take this table, write it as Markdown and put it in a code block. Now, why would I want to put it in a code block? Well, the thing is, how do I get this shared? You can copy the code. You can then use a variety of tools. This is a online tool here. I'll share the links towards the end here. I can paste in with ChatGPT. I now am in a position where I can actually copy or download this information into Excel, or write HTML for it, or create CSV for it. So what we've done is we've taught it how to automate prioritization and then how to use the results. And give a second here. We have a few questions here. Yeah, we're going to be providing some of the results here. We will be providing the prompts here. As Cameron did say, we will be providing materials via email afterwards. So we will have these prompts so you can try them on your own. All righty. So we've gone ahead and shown prioritization automation. We've saved some tokens. Now you're saying, Dean, you're saying save tokens. Even though I'm showing this to you in GPT Plus, I've been put in timeouts. Basically, you can still expend tokens even if you're doing a session in GPT-4, where it says you've got to wait an hour. You've been asking too much. So it's basically what it's saying here. So I use tools that it already knows, so I don't have to explain those. because the larger the prompt, the more tokens you expend. If you can use tools that it already knows, you can save it some time. And you can save those tokens for you want to feed it a model. Here is a model that I want to use that basically is going to take data from the US Census, from Goodwill, Salvation Army, Giving USA, householdgoods.org, Habitat for Humanity. And it's a table that I create. It's a model that I built the other day using ChatGPT. And basically I said, hey, can you, taking these sources here, can you build me a model? And then can you build me a model that I can cut and paste and communicate? And you'll notice this is in Markdown. And the reason this is important is going back to our webinar. Oops, that's the wrong one here. There it is. Go back here. Give me a second here. Let me see. Give a second here. Go back. It's losing its place here. Here's the workshop. I was able to prompt it and saying, look, fill in this table for me. Here's the model. Here are the data sources. Fill this in for me. And basically what this did is it filled out the table for me and basically said, hey, you've got a total addressable market of about 38 million people based off of these calculations. And we see some questions here.
Yeah, if I can jump in with a question here, Dean.
Yeah.
So I think Sarah in the Q&A asked, I think what she's essentially asking is why use ChatGPT versus doing this, just yourself as a human.
Right. So, and I think that's a valid question that Sarah asked. Why do it? We'll say, well, Sarah, here's the deal. I'm new to an organization, right? I'm new. I just been, dropped in. Who do I talk to? What conversations do I need to have? What I'm doing is scaffolding a simulation of the Amazon working backwards process. So it gives me a high view of this. How confident am I of the outputs? Marginally, but it is showing me which conversations I need to have and what areas I need to pursue. Remember when I talked about scaffolding, it is just a starting point. Just like Ruby on Rails, it's not ready for production. So great question there, Nate, is that, yeah, it's not that a matter of confidence, it's a matter of, it's helping us shape the conversations we need to have. Do I need to go back and validate this? Absolutely. Would I do this? Would I just generate it and hand it off to my boss? Not really. So we're using this to basically get a 30,000-foot view. So we know what conversations to have, what meetings to have. I mean, we've all been there. We're a new product manager in a new place. We've just been dropped in, right? We've just been dropped in. What conversations do we need to have? And speaking of a 30,000-foot view, let's keep talking about the problem. Because one of the things that happens to us is that everyone speaks to us in solutions. Our customers, our stakeholders, our coworkers, our engineers, they all speak to us in solution speak. And one of the jobs we have to do as a product manager is translate that into the problem space. So let's look at how ChatGPT can help us further unpack this particular problem we're working on in the problem space here. So I basically said, look, you've got the memo, you've got the table of pain points, you got the prioritizations. Can you fill out the inward-facing portion of the MITRE problem framing canvas? MITRE is a think tank in the DC area here, or in the DC area that I used to live in. It is one of many canvases. You could say use the lean canvas. You could say the business canvas. I chose this. And basically what I'm trying to do is articulate the type of problems. I asked the same question of the inward facing. I'm moving the conversation away from solutions of helping connect donors to recipients And so you can see it actually has some information here. How reliable is it? Well, look, there may be regulatory legal barriers. All right. There may be problems with key risks here. Quality of the donated items, time to deliver items to peoples in disasters here. Talking about the recipients here. Think about a recipient after having their home flattened by a tornado here. They may not be available here. So you can see I'm starting to get a shape of the problem here. And from that, once I have the information and once I've refined that information here, give me a second here, problem space. I decide that I want to narrow the focus down to donors. Based on the feedback I got here, it strikes me that donors would be better place to start my minimum viable proof of life, because you may not be able to get hold of recipients because they may not be available after a hurricane or a tornado. There's a whole bunch of different types of charities. So you're working with a mixed bag. Donors might be the place to start. So we've basically said we're going to start there. And we started saying hey, we're going to use the value proposition canvas. Help me fill out the parts of this. So for example, here are the pain relievers. Now notice I'm going to take this, copy this. And if you've seen this diagram before, this is the Alexander Osterweiler value proposition canvas. I'm going to zoom in on pains here. I'm going to hit paste. And now, and let me just set the color here so you can actually see these a little better here. Give these a nice yellow background. Boom, I filled this out. So you can actually simulate this process. You can actually use this as a conversation starter. You could actually have people on your team saying, hey, look, this is what I generated as examples on our problem here. And now when I'm going through this Canvas exercise with my team, I can say, here are some items that we generated. I'd like you to fill in some more. We can then take that through to the next step. By looking at the pains and the gains here, I did what a good product manager is and not try to boil the ocean, and narrowed it. So we narrowed it down to donors. And now we're going to narrow it down into one gain creator and one pain reliever that we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on addressing the specific needs and a streamlined donation process here. And here are some of the experiments. And here are some of the solutions it gave us here. So now we can sit there and take the, I think I got this. Yeah, here are the pains and gains here. And so now we can take the products and services here. And if we want, give me a second. Let's scroll, please. There we go. We can drop them in here and have conversations. So you can see how this could be used as a conversation starter. Now, there's a question here about privacy. Yeah, I would advise anonymizing work. If you're going to sit there and use ChatGPT or any generative AI, I would anonymize the questions that I put in. So absolutely, you want to anonymize these before you put them in. And in fact, I think there's a lot of places that I've read in the news. I think it was JP Morgan said they put a moratorium on using this. I would imagine that they're going to let people use these tools once they figure out things like, yeah, if you're going to ask questions that are sensitive, you need to anonymize it or not ask sensitive questions at all. Now, we've only been in, now think about this, and this gets to the earlier question here. Why wouldn't I do this in person and human? You do it in person and human, but you do this first as a dress rehearsal. You do this first as your dress rehearsal here, and in that way, you can actually have conversation starters. Because the next part of the conversation is, can I take what I put in for jobs to be done and simulate populating the opportunity solution tree? And so what I did is I picked 2 of the items here. Again, I continue to narrow it down, narrow it down, narrow it down. And you can see it gives me information that I actually take and I can put in a simulated opportunity solution tree here. All right. It's a matter of just how to color these. So I could actually take the opportunity. I could, give it the right color here, move it over here. I can put in the opportunities here. I can put in the solutions here. But now you have a conversation starter. You have examples you can show people. Imagine showing your engineering team, your product team, your usability team, this Teresa Torres style opportunity trees the first time. Wouldn't it be more productive if you had something that was already pre-populated with some examples? Wouldn't you be more ready to answer some of the oddball questions you might get?
Yeah, and Dean,
Now,
we get
the
a
idea with,
question,
yeah,
sorry, about, how do you anonymize that data? How, if you had to do that?
yeah, there are, and I think that's a question you could, there's services out there. I would think, for example, cleaning data has always been that's those services that have been out there for a while. It's not just AI. So there are plenty of services that are used. So for example, when I was working at one company here, we used in our what would you call it? Our pre-launch platform, our delivery platform here, our pre-production platform, anonymized data. And we just used a product for anonymizing the data. So there are products out there you can use that'll take out proper nouns, that'll take out other information here. So that's not hard here. What if I want to use AI for my startup idea? You can certainly use that for your startup idea. You can use this Amazon working backwards process to help you understand before you actually pitch it to anybody. You can actually gives you a chance to look at some of the questions and answers. So rather than just walking up into a room saying, hey, I've got a great idea, now you're able to sit there and use this process here. And you can walk through different types of processes. You don't have to use the Amazon working backwards. You can use for example, you could, if you just wanted to do the 10 slides pitch deck, you could walk through that. But again, you can go ahead and do that. And does ChatGPT own or store the prompts? I think that's something we'd have to look within their terms of use. I know that is a question that's being challenged to all these generative AIs. I think Italy just shut down the use of ChatGPT until that question can be resolved here. So ownership is definitely a question that these generative tools are all facing here. All right, let's keep walking through. Now we've done our Teresa Torres. And by the way, if you don't know how to use some of these tools here, this is one way of learning here. Let's stake out a position here. Now, one of the things we always teach in our classes, a lot of these tools I'm showing you, like the opportunity solution tree, the Osweiler working, what do you call it? Value jobs to be done canvas here, working backwards, staking out a position, positioning statements. This is things that are myself and the other trainers here offer as part of our digital management product classes, our optimal product management classes, and our agile product management classes here. And in fact, what I basically asked ChatGPT was, I got it in a position where it could give me a position statement here. So first of all, I says this, hey, look, based on the opportunity solution tree, give me a vision and a short one-liner here. And this is where I stopped pre-feeding ChatGPT. And I like the emotional power and the emotional one-liner. I do not like this vision. So I'm going to go ahead and get it to regenerate it. I like the emotional one-liner. The vision is too technical. And right? And so again, it's a matter of fine tuning. You always want to fine tune. All right, now this is more visionary. Okay, great vision. Now, what I'm doing here is basically saying, okay, I like what you have, and I'm giving it a place marker to say, oh, we will be referring to this. Right? There it goes. Give me some information here. Yeah, that's fine here. All righty. So now I've got this information here. Now, part of the Amazon working backwards, you've noticed we've spent nearly half of this this workshop on understanding the problem. So now I feel like we can understand the problem. And now I feel like from the Amazon working backwards, we're finally done, go from step one, and we can draft the press release. So let's go ahead and create a document that has a positioning statement, a backstory, a vision, a one-liner, and the press release. So I'm going to go ahead and ask that to do that. And while that's generating live and in person, one of the other things we can do from here, oh, come on, is ask it to write the FAQ, which is one of the other parts. And I'm seeing some questions about Google Sheets and that, but yeah, I
That's
probably have to
actually
do
in
another
relation.
webinar.
Yeah, Google Sheets is actually in relation to people getting connected via LinkedIn.
Right. Okay. Okay. All right. So you can see it's still writing, but you can also use it to write the FAQ. So let's look at some of these questions while it's generating here. What tool would generate presentation quality slides here? Well, you can ask ChatGPT to give you an outline in Markdown using headings, which if you put in a Word document, you can then import into PowerPoint. So if you want to do it on the cheap, that's one way of doing that. There's probably some other tools that could take it. So remember this, you can export from Markdown. You can use it to export information. There's plugins if you purchase, if you subscribe to the OpenAI's API, that's not the same thing as ChatGPT. You can actually embed API calls, open API calls in your Google Docs or your Google Slides. What do you call it? Worksheets here. Okay, it's still writing the press release here. In fact, I'll show you that real quick here. I actually have a subscription to that as well. So I can actually make a call saying GPT, give it some quotes here. Tell me a product joke. All right. And you can see, because I have the paid API and I have it hooked up here, what did the product manager do to break up with the project? Oh, why did the product manager break up with the project? Because it wasn't meeting all the requirements. Yeah, okay, fine. All right, not a great joke, but it just shows you how this is already starting to get embedded here. All right, we're done with our press release. Let's get that FAQ. Now you'll notice that I said, give me at least 12 questions. Specificity is good because it might only give me a 6. I wanted 12. So it's writing that. So it looks like I'm always looking for a framework here. So again, I think the tool here, Tim, is there's ways of taking information. If you can get Markdown from the ChatGPT, which it'll give you, then you can actually put that in an outline, which you can import into PowerPoint. 280 group pioneering an AI product manager curriculum certification. I don't know. I think that's a question we'll need to ask our product management group. So we'll ask that question to Ken Feehan at some point here. Now it's writing our FAQ. Now, while it's writing our FAQ there, let's go back to our outline here. And once we have the FAQ, we're going to go and start bridging the gap from the problem space to the solution space and actually have it fill out these first portion of a Jeff Patton style user story map. Now, this will probably take some time here. So I'll show you what that looks like from my rehearsal session here. So go down here a little bit here and show you what that looks like. The segments, personas, yeah, here it is. So you can see that it basically, here's how it answered the question. And it filled in the blanks there. In fact, you can then take, for example, these activities here, or you can take these steps here and cut them and paste them and put them into your map here. But I'm going to go ahead and take this prompt here, put it in. Let's see if it's got our FAQ written here. Whoops, looks like it's an error generating the response. And that's why we had it. Let's go ahead and refresh here. Okay, there's our FAQ. So now we have this FAQ. We can sit there and cut it and paste it into Word. We can cut it, paste it into, so now we have our FAQ. We can put it in a spreadsheet. We have our press release with the one-pager information. So again, we have information we can actually pick up and put into a Word document if we want. And by the way, there is a ChatGPT is working on there's going to be they're working with companies on plugins. I would imagine this is all going to be integrated here. Now, as you can see, it's starting to write information for my user story map. Now, here's why this is important here. I can actually take this information and start putting it into my user story map. Now, if you haven't used user story maps here, I show how to use these in our various classes as well as and the good thing about these is that it lets you start bridging strategy to tactics. It lets you start shaping a solution, and it lets you do it with people like your UX team, your engineering team, your stakeholders. I don't know how many of you use this. It's a very powerful tool, and you can actually take information here, such as, for example, the steps here for donors is what I'm interested in. Oops. It's moving as fast as I'm trying to copy it. Let me do that again. So imagine we're just focusing on the donors on this user story map. So now, give me a second. Here we go. Go ahead and put this in a row. I now have my steps. Imagine starting your session now that you have the steps here. Now your user story mapping session becomes a refinement session saying, hey, we generated this. Now let's have a meeting. So imagine a meeting with your UX person saying, here's the generative version here. Think about how much you could bootstrap that conversation. And it looks like it's done. Yay, finally here. Now, here's where things get really fun. And this is where things get really fast. Let's say I want to do a now, next, later roadmap here. All right, so the first thing I want to do is get some tasks here. So I'm going to blindly say, give me tasks from steps 1, 3, and 4. All right, so give me tasks from here. Let's see, here are the steps. Give me, yeah, I'm going to say, give me the steps. Give me the tasks for the donor steps from the, so now it's going to give me the tasks. Now, here's the thing with these tasks, as you can see, it's starting to shape what's going to be my epics in my backlog. Now, I got a question. How long did it take you to prep for this? I think the first time I ran an Amazon working backwards, I did it from the viewpoint of being a newly dropped in product manager. I got it done in about an hour and a half. And then I spent some time refining, once I did that, but I took about an hour and a half and felt like it was a good enough scaffolding, a good enough starter kit for me to have the right conversations at work. Now you can see that once we have this information here, glad you like this, Bianca. you can then generate a now, next, later by basically taking the Jeff Patton, if you're familiar with Jeff Patton's approach to this, he creates 2 swim lanes. I would just say create 3 swim lanes: now, next, and later, each with a goal. So I could just sit there and say, create user story map. I'm going to give it 3 goals here and basically have it generate what I want into my roadmap. So now I have a now, next, later roadmap I can start and have conversations, start socializing. So again, to that earlier question, would you be, how reliable is this? You got a 50-50 chance it may or may not be accurate, but you have a 100% chance that this would be a great conversation starter and a great way to start looking at a situation here. Now, here's something that some of you, especially you product owners, you can then take the information from the tasks. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop this right now and just ask it to write me user stories using the invest template and a Gherkin acceptance criteria. The process of validating Nate is to have conversations based on these outputs. You need to talk to your people on your team. You need to check it. So but this gives you a place to start the conversation. It's a jump start. How many tokens were you? I'd have to measure that. I did not meter that. All I know is if I did this without making changes, if I ran it end to end, I was able to do it without getting time boxed. I think I got time boxed a couple times when I had to redo it here. And look, user stories with acceptance criteria. I would imagine that there's going to be a plugin to Jira and ADO at some point here. But until that time, oh, come on, there we go. Why don't we sit there and ask if you can put it in a CSV format so that I can import those into Jira or to ADO. And look, there it goes. It's writing in a CSV format for you that you can copy and paste into a file. Can you create some of the test case next? Michael, if you got a test case, we can plug it in. All right, you can do the same for Azure. I ran this as well. And then finally, if I wanted to explain this process to somebody, I'll go ahead and stop this. What technical conversations do I need to have with my engineering team? So think about that. We've gone from, and then, by the way, I did this with the rehearsal here. The last thing I asked the rehearsal was, this has been a helpful session. Could you break it down on the 12? So we started with understanding the initiative and setting the context. We identified the problems in this. We prioritized, we framed it. We created an executive summary. We developed a value proposition. We used the opportunity solution tree. We created a vision, a one-liner, a positioning statement, a pager, a one-pager, developed a user story map. We split those using into a now, next, later roadmap here. We categorize those, and then we wrote stories. And this is what we actually just did here, this outline. And then I said, oh, by the way, I want to copy and paste this using headers because I wanted to generate a PowerPoint presentation on this. I think the only other question is, if you want to learn more, follow us on LinkedIn, follow the 280 group. I think you want to share that link to in the chat there to the 280 group there, Cameron. I'm going to share my own link here as well. You can discover us on Twitter. Share your discoveries as you practice this. Go ahead and share what you've done. All right. You can reach me on Twitter. Real easy. I'd love to see what you've done with this. You want to learn more like this? We teach so many of these methods from real life experience and hands-on teaching. We actually create mural boards like this where we give you time to fill in the blanks yourself. So explore our agile product management classes, and again, they're agile product management. So it's not just learning about Scrum, it's about doing it from a product manager. Learn about our digital product management or optimal product management here, and just tell your friends. So let's see, do you have, how do you organize your pre-built prompts and primers? I haven't really got a system for that, Evan. So we'll probably need to do that next. Are these frameworks taught, yeah, they are taught as part of our certification courses here. How much time do you, well, think about this, all right? I just scaffolded this entire process. Imagine if I was at work here. Within the course of an hour or two, it's the end of week 1. I got there on a Monday, it's Friday. I now have a bunch of questions here. And think about that, how much more powerful and effective I would be in having at least this idea. Then I could socialize it. I would suggest socializing small. So first thing I would say is, hey, I created, I don't know everything yet. Like if I had a director of product, but I did go ahead and set this up and scaffold this. Could you look through this here and poke holes in what I have? And they would instruct us. So maybe your director, she would show you how your product proposition was wrong, or your value statement was wrong, or that's not what we do for a business here. So, but now you have a place to have those conversations. Now you can go to marketing with, hey, I've got this idea, or go to UX and say, this is what I'm thinking about here. And by the way, we will be sharing all this here. I've actually put some URLs here. So for those of you who are in the mural, I don't know how well it's functioning, but these are all links here to some of the different things I've shown. We will be creating, you don't have access to that. We will be creating a PDF and sharing this. That'll have this information, including some of the sidebars I didn't have time to get into. Have you toyed with saving outputs and transferring from one session to the? Yes, I have. I've actually taken information from ChatGPT and fed it into not just other ChatGPT session, but I've actually fed that into Bard and Bing as well. For example, I might just sit there and say like, yeah, what would be something we could feed into Bard here real quick here. Let's take our one pager here. One pager. All right, here's the one pager. Let's copy this. Let's go to Bard because there's a, unfortunately, Bing has a character limit. Tell me what conversation to have next based on this product initiative one pager. Paste it in. It also understands Markdown. And by the way, when I teach, yeah, Markdown is one of the, for example, there's all sorts, by the way, there's a question about Markdown. Yeah. In fact, I just fed it Markdown here. So look at this. This is Bard. Here's a Markdown editor. So if you're not familiar with Markdown here, you can use Markdown editors as a way of getting information and refining that as well. Yeah, Bard's not an LLM. It's using Lambda. It's still a large language model, but but you're right. It's initially based off an LLM, but it's definitely it's its own beast here. But you're absolutely right, Stephen. But again, you notice that I just cross-fed information here. And then maybe what I could do is take this information and feed it into Bing and say, write me a one-liner. Write me a vision statement. Whoops, spelling based on this. There it goes. Now you notice I cut it off here. Sharing some of the links. Yeah, they're all the links I've got in that useful URL section there.
On the mural.
Yeah, in the mural. Yeah.
Cool. And
would you know when? I have no idea when Bard's going to be available. That's yeah. So any other questions here? Because I think I've shown everything we're going to show here. You know, a lot to show. How long will this mural remain? I think we're going to keep it up for a while here. I'm not going to sit there and evaporate it overnight. But again, I would suggest, you know, if you want to learn more about how to work and think like this in terms of product, whether you do it through generative AI or whether you do it through face-to-face conversations, look at some of our training. This is what myself and people like Todd and Joe and Ryan, people like Kenny and Bill and Tom and Roger, we all have about 20 years experience each. And we all teach these classes here, and we can walk you through these larger ways of getting work done here. This is just a small, you know, I mean, considering we had about 50 minutes to show it all, this is just showing you how to think like a product manager instead of just doing stupid parlor tricks with ChatGPT, and actually pulling work through from end to end, as opposed to here's how to fill out the user story map. Well, your user story map doesn't make any sense, or your lean canvas doesn't make any sense if it's a garbage in or garbage out. But by taking advantage of the fact that we set a context here, understand the problem, then write our one-pager, then bridge strategy to tactics, then bridge tactics to planning, we then can fill in the blanks with something that's not garbage or parlor tricks. Right? So Cameron, I think we're ready to do our poll again, our second poll.
Yeah, we got another poll. So let me get that up here. So poll question number 2, which I just launched, is how much do you plan on using AI in your work in the next 6 months? After this training, I'm hoping you guys feel a little more confident, a little more capable, understanding the tools a little better. Yeah, we're about to wrap up here. The other thing I want to point out is something we really, really want out of this from our audience here is we would love for your questions to, please share your questions with us. We know there's a lot that Dean couldn't get to here. As he shared, he covered quite a bit in about 50 minutes, but there's just things we don't have time for. So let us know what you want answered, and if there's a subsequent webinar we should be doing, let us know. We want those answers. So with that said, I'm going to wrap up this poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's see the results here. We have people now we have about 50% people wanting to use it about 50% of the time. That's a pretty good growth from where we started, I would say, Dean.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but think about it. We just did Amazon working backwards in 50 minutes to create a simulated, what do you call it, jump starter here. Obviously, we want to be careful with this. We shouldn't take this into production, but these are your conversation starters. And let's face it, product management is about the conversations and the people. But now you have a place to frame these conversations and captures. I'm so glad to see some of you are more confident here. I was hoping to see, we were seeing that pretty much everyone was lacking confidence here. So hopefully we'll see this. All right.
Yeah. And to wrap things up here, I'll stop sharing the poll here, but yes, please go join our LinkedIn group on LinkedIn. And we want to hear these conversations there. And if you don't want to share them there, or you can share them with us via email and elsewhere. We do have a great promotion going on right now. Tax Day 15. If you use that at checkout on our website, you can get 15% off of our trainings, including one coming up with Dean, if you want to go to the next slide. So,
and there's a live one in Raleigh too.
Yeah, we got online. A lot. So we have a live online training happening on April 25th. So just a couple weeks here. And yeah, you got one in May, right? In Raleigh live.
In middle of May, May 9th and 10th. So you folks in Raleigh and nearby, you want to see it? There will be singing if we get this rolling.
Awesome. So please, yeah, feel free to send us your questions. We'd love to get them answered in subsequent follow-up videos and another webinar. So thank you, Dean, for your time. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks everyone here. Appreciate it. I know there's a lot of your day here. We'll try to get the other questions answered, and thanks so much.
Thank you.